So the snow's gone, the temperature is creeping up towards a tropical 10 degrees, so it must be getting near to springtime. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, not the weather, about springtime reading and my springtime TBR. Hi everyone, welcome back to Wilde Reads, welcome back to another video. My name is Dave. Today I want to talk to you about my TBR and TBRs in general, and I'm also going to do the TBR tag at the end of this. I'm going to tag it on, I'm going to tag the tag onto the end of this video. How's that for a tag? But I wanted to talk to you about, because it's spring now, as soon as March comes around, as soon as it's March the 1st, I count that as spring. It's calendar spring to me. I count my seasons in, so March, April, May are spring, June, July, August are summer, and so on. 3 months per season. Now I know officially spring doesn't start to the end of the month, or until the clocks go forward and we leap headlong into British summertime, but that isn't for a couple of weeks yet. So, but look, it's the 10th of March, it's spring, the sun's out, the snow's melted, it must be spring. Anyway, how are we all? What have we all got lined up to read for spring? Well, I, for one, am going to be reading the Women's Prize for Fiction long list this spring, because the long list came out the other night, and if you haven't seen the video I made, I will link it down below. I stayed up till midnight, well, way past midnight. The long list was revealed at midnight. I stayed up to watch it, and I was making a video at the same time. Boy, was I tired the next day. I'm not used to it anymore. I can't do these late nights. I'm 45 and I feel, the day after, I felt like I was 75. Run Right Reads did ask me in the comment below that video, am I staying up to reveal the shortlist? If I feel like I did the day after, probably not. But I'll probably stay up for the Booker long list, which is in July. But anyway, so I'm off on a tangent already. So, springtime reading. What is on my springtime TBR? Well, I do plan to read the long list this year. So that's 16 books. I've only read one of them so far, and that is 3 Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon. I have started Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Loving this so far. I said on Twitter the other day that, you know that feeling that you get when you've read the first page of a book and you know instantly that you are going to love that book. That's this. Absolutely loving it so far. But I have already got some of the books from the long list, and I have already got these are for something else. I'll get to these in a moment. So I've already got Jesmyn Wilde, Sing Unburied Sing. I've already got The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy. I've already got Elmer by Fiona Mosley, and I've also got I've got a hardback copy of Eleanor Oliphant as well. The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock I've also got as well. So they're all books that are on the long list for the Women's Prize this year, which I will be reading, because I'm reading the whole list. Did I mention that? I'm reading the whole list. Now, interspread between that, that'll probably take me a couple of months. 16 books, a couple of months, although the speed I've been reading that lately, it might take a little bit longer. But we'll see. Interspread among that, I do have a few other books to read as well. But I wanted to talk to you about TBRs, mostly. So my TBR for spring is to read the long list, and I might take a break in the middle of it, just because there are a couple of thrillers that have come out recently that I'm desperate to get hold of and desperate to read. So I might just take a break from the women's long list for a week or so, just to squeeze in a couple of thrillers that I really want to read. One of them is The Smiling Man by Joseph Knox, who also wrote Sirens, which was brilliant. And I've been looking forward to reading The Smiling Man for a long, long time. So anyway, TBRs. How do you do your TBR? Now, there is some, not disagreement on BookTube about TBRs, because I don't think it's the kind of thing you can really disagree on. You know, people either do it one way or they do it another way. I'll tell you the way I do it. So my TBR is, in order to be on my TBR, I must physically own that book. Now, there isn't a right way or a wrong way to do a TBR. There's just my way and someone else's way. It's probably the best way to look at it. So what I do, so I have to, in order to be on my TBR, I have to physically own the book. If I don't own the book, then it goes on something that I call a wish list, and it's a wish list that I used to make it on Amazon, but now I probably use Book Depository more. I can't count them on my TBR because I don't physically own those particular books yet. What I should get round to, and if I was in any way, shape or form organised, then I do plan to do this one day, is to actually put all my unread books onto a Goodreads shelf and just call that shelf the TBR. Now this is very easy to do with the scanning technology nowadays, because obviously the Goodreads app on the phone comes with a scanner. Very easy to work. That falls down, however, when you've got, because I've got a lot of like old books like this, Paradise Lost, you know, a 1924 edition of the Jungle Book, short novels by John Steinbeck. You know, these don't carry ISBN codes, so all these would have to be entered manually. Now I did also put on Twitter the other day, I did a rough count of my TBR, so books up here, books downstairs, and it was about, and this is a conservative estimate, 700 plus. So there's 700 books on my TBR, just over 700 books on my physically owned but unread TBR, which is kind of scary, but it's nothing compared to some people's. What else I wanted to do with this video today was I did look round for a TBR tag. Now I know there are a couple of TBR tags on BookTube. One of them's called the Intimidating TBR tag, and this isn't that tag. This is just the TBR tag, and I found a couple of versions of it. So the questions on the TBR tag are, how do you keep track of your TBR pile? Well, as I've mentioned, I don't really. I don't keep track of my TBR pile. It's just, if I can see it and I haven't read it, it's on my TBR pile. Is your TBR mostly print or ebook? My TBR pile is 99.9% physical. This is a good question. How do you determine which book from your TBR to read next? I sort of create a pile of books that I want to read during the next month or so, but it's a very loose pile. It's not strict. You know, sometimes I don't want to know what I'm going to read in a month's time or what book I'll be reading in 2 months' time, because it's nice just to sort of read by whim sometimes, and sometimes you'll read a book and it will take you off on a reading journey of its own. You might read a book from an author that you haven't read before. You love it so much that you want to read some of their backlist. It is nice when that happens. So another question here is, a book that's been on your TBR the longest. I've got no idea book has been on my TBR the longest. It's probably one of the classics. It's probably a Hardy novel or a Dickens novel or something that's been on my... I can't think of one offhand, but there are a lot of books that have been on my TBR physically owned for a very, very long time. In fact, last year I made a video. Do you remember when Mercedes was making the 5-star prediction videos? And I made a video in response to that. And I think there are about a dozen books on there. Haven't read any of them yet. Another question here, a book you recently added to your TBR. Well, probably the newest book added to my TBR is Jasmine Wilde, Sing Unburied Sing, which has got a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous cover. But as you know, if you watch my book hauls, I'm always in charity shops, and I do seem to purchase an awful lot of books, which is no bad thing. A book in your TBR strictly because of its beautiful cover. So there are a couple of these. I've got this. This is Above the Waterfall by Ron Rash, winner of the Frank O'Connor Award. And this has got a gorgeous cover. Look at that. Look at that salmon. Isn't that lovely? And also A Skinful of Shadows has got a beautiful cover as well. I mean, The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock has got, look at that. It's just stunning, isn't it? Production values for books nowadays are absolutely superb. A book on your TBR that you never plan on reading. I've got a couple of these. They are these. Now, there is a third book in this series that's, I think, either just been published or just about to be published, but I haven't heard anyone say anything nice about these books. So I've got them both in hardback, and I bought them because I didn't know anything about them. But then after I bought them, someone told me that it's just like a bit of a rip-off of 50 Shades, and they're supposed to be thrillers, and I've just heard that they're not very good. So they're on my TBR, but I don't think at the moment I'm ever going to get around to reading them. So I might just give them away. I might just donate them back to the charity shop, because I don't, at this point in time, I can't ever see me getting round to these. An unpublished book on your TBR that you're excited for. Well, as I said earlier, if it's unpublished, it isn't on my TBR. It's on my sort of wish list going forward. So, new Kate Atkinson book this year that I'm super excited about. That's in the autumn or in the fall. And also a new, what did I hear about the other day? So I've heard of a new Kate Atkinson book, a new Sarah Perry book that's due. So I'm probably most excited about the Kate Atkinson book. I don't think we're going to get an Ian McEwan this year. A book on your TBR that basically everyone's read but you. Probably all of them. Back to Kate Atkinson, probably A God in Ruins and Life After Life. They're both on my TBR. I've got them both in paperback and in hardback. And everyone seems to have read them apart from me because I'm very late to the party on that kind of thing. I read A Little Life well after a year after everyone else read it. A book on your TBR that everyone recommends to you. Probably those two from Kate Atkinson, Life After Life and A God in Ruins. Oh, actually, Wolf Hall from Hilary Mantel. I haven't read that yet either. I've got that on my TBR. A book on your TBR that you're dying to read. The Women's Long List. I think it's an absolutely fantastic long list this year, so I'm dying to read all of those. And how many books on your TBR shelf? As I said earlier, I think it's the fat end of 700. What's your plans for the spring? What are your reading plans this spring? Who's going to be reading the long list from the Women's Prize? What else have you got lined up to read? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a talk about the spring TBR. Let's have a bit of a discussion about it. I look forward to hearing what everyone's got to say. That's it from me. Whatever you're doing this week, enjoy your books, and I'll see you back here next time for another BookTube video. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.